Okay, guys, we're still working on 5.1 and 5.2. Let's look at some word problems here. They're kind of hit and miss. The best advice I can give you is when you're reading a word problem, if you don't understand what it's asking, draw yourself a picture and see if you can form some kind of triangle. The only kind of terms that you would need to know for this section is you might hear something about an angle of depression or an angle of elevation. Elevate means to lift up, depression means to push down. So an angle of elevation is, if you consider a horizontal line, horizontal goes left and right, the angle of elevation is the angle up to your line of sight, and the angle of depression is from a horizontal all the way looking downwards, okay, to whatever object. I have this poster, and if you were in my class, I would actually have this posted. I found this a few years ago and I loved it. I want you to consider a little owl up in a tree. If he looks straight across in the distance, this is your horizontal line. So if he decides to look down and he's like, woohoo, look, there's lunch, there's a little mouse at the bottom. His view from this horizontal line downwards, that's your angle of depression. Now, this little mouse who's looking up, right here, this is your angle of elevation, because here is your horizontal from his point of view, and then you look up. So this is your angle of elevation because his chin or his eyes would be elevating. Now, if you are comfortable with your math that you learned in grade 9, hopefully you remember some of your parallel line theorems. This gives you a Z pattern. So this angle of depression does end up equaling this angle of elevation. So if you're drawing your diagrams, please try and keep this little owl and mouse in mind, and hopefully hopefully your answers will come out the right way. Okay, I only want to do one question with you. There's a couple in your books, and this one is in fact from your book. Okay, and it talks about, I just liked it because it was a little bit more involved. It talks about finding the area of a triangle. The first thing you should notice is this triangle is not a right angle triangle. So in some of these questions, you will have to use trigonometry twice in order to figure out your answer. So Elisa's parents have a house with a triangular front lawn. They want to cover the lawn with sod rather than plant grass seed. They need to know what area of lawn has to be covered. So I've got this angle here. I've got two sides, but nothing is a right angle triangle. So I want you to imagine, first thing that we're going to do is try and get something here that can help us out. So if there were a right triangle in there, we'd be able to solve, or at least start solving. So we're going to take a point right from the top and drop it straight down to make two right angle triangles. Okay, so essentially we're going to draw a diagram that makes sense to us. There we go. So here is our lovely diagram. We've dropped this dashed horizontal line down. And now we've got a right angle triangle, which we should be able to solve, which we can solve using our trig ratios. So now we're looking at A, D, and B to create our triangle, and it's a right angle triangle. And the reason that we do this is hopefully it will help us find the areas of both. So let's go down a little bit further. I want to figure out eventually what this area is. Now, a triangle, for the formula for area, is base times height divided by 2. So really what I need to do is I need to find this height, right? Because I've got the base, it's 11. I just don't know that, okay? So let's see if we can find this. Oh, we'll get there in a second. There we go. So looking at my right angle triangle, they've given me an angle. This is the one I'm going to label everything in relation to. Here is my 90 degree, which means this is the hypotenuse. And I'm looking for the height. It is across from the 40 degrees. It is opposite to the 40 degrees, so it's O for opposite. So find the trig ratio. Now we get to pick our trig ratio that deals with O and H. Okay, it's going to be sine. So sine of my angle is opposite over the hypotenuse. Substitute what we know into our equation. My angle is 40. My opposite, I don't know, it's just H. We're going to plug in the letter H. And my hypotenuse is 13. So I plug in 13. Now we're going to use the math that you saw earlier in our section to solve for our H. This 13 is going to be brought up to the other side. Now they show it in a little bit of a funky way, and that's fine. So this 13 is going to be brought up. So I'm going to have 13 times sine of 40. Okay. Oops. There we go. So You multiply both sides by 13, these go away, and you're left with h equals 13 times sine 40. They just wrote it nice and neat for you on the next line. And now we're going to figure out what sine of 40 is, times it by 30, plug it into your calculator, and you should get 8.356. Okay. Now, we found the height, but we still have to answer the question, which asked us to find the area. So now I'm going to go base times height divided by 2. Area is base times height divided by 2, or half base times height. My base was 11. My height we just found from here, and then divide by 2. Plug it all into your calculator, and you should get an area of about 45.96 meters squared. Okay, so really that's what you're doing. Whether they give you a triangle or whether you're drawing your own is fine. Angles of elevation and depression, you shouldn't see too many of those, but if you do, don't be panicked by them. Just do your best to draw the diagram. And that's pretty much it. Okay, guys, have a great evening, and we'll see you for the next section.